Hello, it is Friday morning, and once again, time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. Um, I'm here at the table with a snake and an octopus, and I'm going to be finishing the snake today by just doing a little bit of wash application to the base so it doesn't look quite so flat. And then I'm going to start on the octopus, and there's been a request to try to make it look like what's this? This is called a blue striped octopus. Apparently, it's very venomous, but also really quite pretty. Um, so, painting the under, if I can get the right color, painting that isn't going to be too hard. Getting a buff color on all these little suckers, which are actually pretty well uh, printed on this thing. Okay. So I'll be doing a lot of like reaching under and trying to get those painted without getting paint on everything else. So we'll see how that goes. And then there's these spots, and on this one, the inside of the spots is pretty much the same color as the rest of it, but on some of the other pictures, it's sort of a greenish color, and then it's surrounded by these rings, and there's a dark blue and a light blue. And I'm going to try to make those out of the pearlescent paint that we've got. And we'll just see how it goes. Fortunately, the spots or rings are like they're not uniform, right? I mean, they're just so I don't have to make them like perfectly round. They just have to be thin. So I'll be using a tiny brush and doing my best with the pearlescent paint. That's kind of hard to use because it's very viscous. It's almost jelly-like. Um, so it doesn't really spread that well. But I'm hoping that that will work. So what I'm going to probably do is get a base coat on this of some color that's not quite like this yellow. I'm going to look for something a little creamier, maybe I don't know. I'll get my color charts out and see what I can use. It won't be quite like this because I don't have this color. But I'll base coat this and then get out another lighter color, maybe ivory or something, and try to paint some of the suckers on it. And then I'm going to do this in 3 steps. I'm going to paint spots in kind of greenish yellow if I have one. Anyway, something to contrast with the body color. And then outline it in the dark blue and then get the light blue around it as well. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll find out. Just a couple of things to give you an update. One is my large print chat screen isn't working again. And that probably is just because of the way things were shut down or not shut down on Wednesday. And there is no music. And I'll mention this a couple of times during the stream. And we've also talked about it on the Dungeons and Dragons show, is that we've been getting like content ID hits on YouTube for the Nakarada music, the Alexander Nakarada music that we have been using with full permission for years. But there's some sort of dispute going on that I'm not fully aware of. I guess people are still trying to figure out why. There's been claims made against the Nakarada music, even though it's Nakarada music. So, and Alexander owns it. At any rate, there's a mess with the music, and I think that anybody who's been streaming and tries to add music have experienced that one form or another. So we decided to not add music to this stream, which is too bad because sometimes I just kind of go quiet, or you would prefer to listen to something other than me droning on about whatever. But that's the way it is. We just have to deal with it, and hopefully it'll be resolved sooner than later. So that's two things. The third thing is that I will actually be traveling again. I was planning when I got back from the last family trip that, which was what, in January, that, or early February, I can't remember now, that I would be here, consistently through the end of March, beginning of April, until the next trip, which was to see the solar eclipse. But it turned out not to be the case. Our son and daughter-in-law kind of assertively invited us to make a trip out to see our granddaughter. So I'll be going to Germany next week. And so I will not be streaming almost 2 full weeks, all of next week and most of the week after. I will try to get back on the 21st, hopefully, depending on how bad the jet lag is. And we'll be picking up then. Let's see. And a fourth thing is that I won't be doing a lot of minifigs anymore. We're kind of running out of them, and we don't need any on the show. So these two guys look like they might be kind of the last I'll be doing for a while, and I'll be then focusing on getting the submarine finally done. There's always something with that, though. This is the 95% completed renovation of a antique vehicle, right? You always see them for sale. 95% restored. And what happens is that, you get that, and then all of a sudden it's just like one little thing after the other. So maybe I'll show you one of the little things. I successfully taped and masked the folded down hull of the submarine, the one that folds down, that's attached to the base. I did that on Wednesday, and that worked out okay. I spray painted it yesterday. It's over there. But what I saw was that when I tried to get rid of a seam and a discontinuity in the base where the two halves come together, they didn't quite match up. There was just a little bit, so I filed that down. Well, it just looks really scabby. So apparently, although it looked okay at first, once sort of a semi-gloss paint gets on it, any kind of flaw shows. And in this case, it looks like I basically gouged it out with a file. So I can either leave it and move on and say, oh, well, that looks scabby, or I can get out like 3 or 4 grits of sandpaper and sand it down so it's nice and smooth, and then repaint it. So I'll take a look at that a little later, maybe in this stream, if not when I get back, and make a decision. Right now, it was really kind of disappointing because the spray painting went pretty well, and I thought the masking looks good. I'm going to leave the masking on for now. I was going to do like a reveal today, take the masking off and say, oh, look, it's done, until I saw those flaws on the base. And then it was, really, this is going to show that badly. I'm not sure I can leave it like this after everything else I've done with the submarine, to have the base look not nice, because, the base is pretty visible. So I'll probably end up, spending the better part of 20 or 30 minutes with little bits of sandpaper, going, is it smooth yet? Is it smooth yet? And then, I don't know. I think maybe I just hadn't thought of it when I was doing it. People who are really good modelers and are doing it all the time and are master modelers and skilled and all of that, and I'm not, probably would have done something simple like just put water on it to make it look glossy so you could see if there was a hole or not. But I didn't do that, and because I didn't do that, now I've got this situation where I just need to spend some time sanding down that place where the file marks show, and respraying it. I mean, respraying it'll be easy. It's just getting the prep work done. Anyway, that's the sad story of the ongoing story of the submarine. The rest of the submarine, again, it's like almost done. I need to mask off the interior of the submarine so I can spray paint the outside of the hull because the bare plastic doesn't look very good. And then just install, there's little bits that need to be installed. There's a dive plane that goes on the sail or the conning tower and the propeller, and reinstall the periscopes and snorkels and stuff. Anyway, that's the story of that. So the other, what did I mention? That the large print chat screen I wasn't able to get it going. And the last time tech support came down here, tech support meaning Alexis, to fix it, she just fixed it and I didn't see what she did. Or if I did see what she did, I didn't remember what she did. And so, yeah, can't see it. So I'm going to look up every now and then. I can see on the tiny print chat screen that I can see lines appear. If somebody's chatting, I can see lines appear, but I can't read them. So I might just stop and get my glasses out and find the tiny little spot in the trifocals, which is like right there. I have to hold my head like that. And then I can read the fine print. Because if I look down, I can't. And, I can't see close up with these because the only place I can is like right here. So I have time. Anyway, trifocals aren't any fun. Anyway, I'm going to do a simple thing to begin with. I'm going to do an easy thing and apply a wash to the base. I'm going to use smoky ink, which is kind of a reddish one, because I just wanted to get a little bit of color. It's a big model, a big round base, and hopefully not get it all over the snake. And then I'll be pulling out my color charts and finding base coat color, sucker color. You can see that they're a lighter color here than base coat. And then a color for the inside of the spots. I don't need to find colors for the rings because I know what those will be. I'll just show them to you when the time comes. Okay, well, let's give this a mix. Try to get the filter on the microphone is really good. You can't hear the humming and the clicking and all this other stuff with the Vortex mixer. It'd be good if you could, because then there'd be sounds other than me. But you can't, because the filter works. I can tell that because there's this bar on the screen I'm looking at, which gives me feedback about some of the things that are working or not working. And if I stop talking, then the little bar for the microphone stops moving. Yeah, this is going to be one of those days I can't even pick up the brush. Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of things about getting old that, just aren't. I just don't recommend it if you, just stay young. Like trifocals or achy hands when the reading about 3 or 4 days ago, does the weather really affect how you feel? And it's hard to do real studies of those. Okay, you can't do double blind with the weather. Randomized control studies or anything like that. So, they do questionnaires and stuff. The most usual thing is that when there's significant pressure changes, get achy, especially in your joints. Well, I can tell you with my non-randomized, non-controlled study with an N of 1, that is just one subject, that yes, the weather does affect how you feel. And we've got a major pressure change coming through, and I feel achy. Take that. Take that, science. It is, you're not going to, you're not going to persuade me that I'm not feeling achy just by saying, well, we can't prove that you feel achy. I'm just sort of dabbing this on because I want it to look, to the extent that it shows it all, I want it to look non-uniform so that the base has just, a little bit of texture to it. There are, other things I could do that would take more time and probably look better, but I'm not going to. It's just, this particular model isn't that important. I'm not sure that will, it's like gigantic compared to the size of our Dungeons and Dragons figures. And, the DM might say, well, I don't know, it's time for you all to meet a gigantic snake. I mean, just beyond huge. And we'll say, well, do we have a choice? And the DM will say, no, I am the DM. You have now met a gigantic snake. And we'll go, okay. Cast Talk with Animals. My character doesn't have to cast Talk with Animals because I can talk with animals. Learned growing up, I guess, but I can't understand them if they talk back. Lead with the snake, the gigantic snake, that it would be, you don't really need to eat us or, kill us or anything like that. You don't really need to do that. So why don't you just not say that, and they could understand what I'm saying, but I wouldn't be able to understand their response. So I'd have to look at, what really happened, like if they attacked us or didn't. Anyway, I don't know if we're going to end up running into the snake in our Dungeons and Dragons show or not. But, so by kind of splotting this around where it's drying, I don't know if you can see that on the screen very well, but where it's drying, it changes the color a little bit and makes it look splotchy, which is kind of nice. So the base of the octopus is supposed to look like the sea bottom. I guess I won't need to worry about that until I actually get the octopus painted, which, I don't know, it's a really nice print. It came out really well. 3D on the 3D printers, sometimes the things don't come out that well. But on the rosin printer, the octopus came out really nice. Well, there we go. Well, that's done. And I'll just leave it on here because if I grab it by the edges, I'll be grabbing it where I painted it. I would like getting it on me anyway. Why not? Those. See, that would have been an interlude where it would have been nice to have music, and you could have just listened to the music instead of not hearing anything at all. nope, can't do it because of some sort of dispute about copyright of music that's owned by the composer and which we've been given permission to use, but there's, it's not even, there's some sort of algorithm that supposedly catches anything that sounds potentially like anything else. Or sometimes nefarious individuals will attempt to capture somebody else's music, claim it as their own, and then try to make claims against it. I'm going to get some coffee here. This is one of our authentic Dice and Dungeons mugs. We have these made a while ago. And all of the members of our Dice and Dungeons D&D campaign have one, and they sometimes, with some frequency, will appear in our Dungeons and Dragons show. Well, I thought we were going to sell these, but I guess we're not. Anyway, they're pretty cool because they've got our logo on it and all, and they're dishwasher safe pretty much. Okay, well, that I need to get paints that kind of look like those colors, and I don't have any, so I'll try to find something that comes close to it. Got it. I made an official color chart by splashing paint onto pieces of paper and sticking them in a ring binder. Yeah, I did that because, anybody who's used paints knows that you can't tell from the bottle cap or from the wet color what they're going to look like when they're dry. So there's that. And then this, we had like 2 colors of wash at the very beginning when we first started painting things. We had brown and black, and I just put some on, all of the colors, to see what they would look like with a wash on them. Gotten a little more sophisticated now. I think we got like 6 colors of wash. That one's not bad. The bone white might be a possibility. These are too dark. Actually, that's not bad. It's got a little yellow in it. It's kind of dark. I'd like it to be lighter. I'm almost tempted to use this yellow. This is the yellow I used on the snake. Took like 3 coats to get it to work. Maybe it's not quite as bright. Deep yellow. I wonder. Just going to mutter to myself out loud. It's really kind of tempting to try to use this yellow color, because some pictures you see of these blue striped octopi are pretty yellow. Some are kind of brownish colors. I mean, that could work, but it's not. It's not a very nice color. I mean, something that should be kind of bright. And I'm not trying to make this necessarily look exactly like blue stripe octopus. I'm just using it as a model, because these are fantasy figures. I could use that for the suckers. That comes pretty close. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try the deep yellow. It'll take more than 1 coat. The yellows tend to be fairly translucent, They don't cover in just one coat. So that would give me a chance to, play with other colors as well. I don't want it, that might be a little too dark. So deep yellow, okay. Deep yellow it is. See how it looks. Here to our custom made paint holder thing. Yeah. That one, yeah. I'm looking at some other colors here. Oh yeah, I was looking at that, but that's not going to work as well. All right, let's try again. Look for the deep yellow. The yellows are up here. Deep, deep yellow. And the other color I was looking for was kind of a brownish color for the suckers. I put these away neatly away, so I could find them. This medium. Okay, I'm going to be indecisive here. Oh, what will it sound like? Um, I think it will be surprising. Okay, it will. The octopus you would think would be, I am an octopus whooshing through the ocean. No, it'll probably sound more like, hello, I am an octopus. It'll sound like the minister in Princess Bride. It'll talk like that. Oh, no, you're on a polio, son. Using my venom to kill fish. I know I'm not very good with voices. That's how it'll talk. What do you think? And I will do a flip for you. None of this is breakable, so I can flip the big piece. This is going really well today, isn't it? Good grief. Okay. What can I say? It's just going to be that kind of day, isn't it? Um, Being that kind of a day comes up fairly often. I'm going to just keep flipping this. This is a lot more relaxing than painting. But yeah, the octopus, I think, if I were to voice it, and I won't because I'm not good at doing voices, as you just found out, um, would make it sound like that. Okay, I'm seeing some like little bits of um, filaments and things from the printing process. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'll be using these later again to put these on. These are my head magnifiers, so I can see sort of if there are little bits of plastic that need to come off that I didn't catch before I primed it. But back here, Those should not be there. That's the one I saw before. Usually these little filaments come off pretty easily, unless they're attached to something fragile like a sword or maybe a feather on a wing, in which case then the filament stays and the sword or the wing feather breaks off. I've done that many times. So the frequent feature of relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons is the fabrication of sword blades or arrow points to replace the ones that I broke. Okay, well, that's that. It's got nicely formed eyes to make those. It was eye looking later. I really shouldn't need these to put the base coat on, but then again, I probably should, because what I find frequently is that I apply the base coat and I did a really good job at full coverage everywhere, right? And then I look at it through the head magnifiers and it's, oh, look, I've missed an entire spot, or that looks really scabby, or whatever. Okay, this is going to take a while. I need to get, underneath here and around. I'll be getting it all over the base. I'll just say that. The base is going to be painted in this color to a large extent. As I attempt to get everything covered well. No real good place to hold it. So I'll see if it will stick to one of these. When they get big and heavy like this, sometimes they don't hold very well. And I'm moving along and I'm saying, oh, this is going pretty well. Which is usually the time then that falls off and maybe lands on me and gets paint all over my pants and stuff. Okay, well, I picked the color that I'm going to attempt to use as the base coat and just see how it looks. Oh, I didn't pick a color for the spots, the inside of the spots. The rings around them are going to be dark blue with light blue, and hopefully successful use of the pearlescent paints. But the inside of the spots maybe will be a slightly different color. Maybe I'll use the darker yellow. Maybe I'll use kind of a beige color. Maybe I'll try to get them slightly green. I'm not sure. I haven't used this paint since I did the color chart practically. So the pigment has settled quite seriously. There's a little ball bearing in there that I put in all the paints to help mix them. And it took a fair amount of mixing just to get the ball bearing break loose. There's a couple of these colors, like some of the greens, where it just doesn't mix that well. And so it takes a lot of stirring to get it to work. Well, there's yellow. The other thing I might end up doing, depending on how this looks, if it just doesn't look good, the first coat definitely is not going to look good because it isn't going to cover. So I'm thinking is that if it needs to be toned down some, I might take something like, I don't know, ivory or one of those beige kind of colors and dry brush on it, there's a nice texture on this. So it might pick that up and make it look maybe a little less bright. I did that with it was a Quetzalcoatl, actually, I think. No, the was it? Yeah, it was. It was the goose, the gigantic dire goose, the lute playing dire goose bard. I know you have to see it. Maybe I'll show it to you. It's hard to do a fair description of it. Like you really need to see it to believe it. Anyway, it was a very, very large goose figure playing a lute. And I had a really, used this nice off-white color as the base coat under the wings and things, and then started to dry brush the feathers on. And it was like this. Okay, it didn't cover that well. And I thought, well, and I dry brush the darker color on, that'll be fine. But it didn't. It just stayed gray. So instead of dry brushing onto the color that I wanted, the beige color, it dry brushed onto gray, and it just looked not good. And the same thing will happen here. So I'm going to have to put at least a second coat on before I attempt to do anything else to change the color, if I want to change the color. In fact, it's going to be really hard to tell with just this first coat what color it really is, because it's all mottled, because the paint doesn't. Yeah, it's just the nature of these colors. I found that on the missile tubes on the submarine, which are painted pretty much the same color, except I used a spray paint because I didn't want brush marks on them. The spray paint failed to cover the same way. It has the same sort of jelly-like texture as the brush-on paint, and it took 3 coats. I mean, the first coat looked kind of like this, and I didn't want to, you don't want to spray it on too thick, because then it just like runs and you get all sorts of drips. Didn't want drips down the sides of my missile tubes on my submarine. So then the second coat covered fairly well, but there were still areas that didn't get covered. So there's a lot of paint on those missile tubes, just tell you that. Now, some of this issue with coverage, if I had used a white primer instead of the gray primer, probably, it wouldn't be covering any better, really, but it would be a lot brighter. Okay, because the color that showed underneath it would be white instead of gray. But primer I have is gray primer, so that's what got on here. Just looking ahead to painting the base underneath it and trying to get the paint in here, whatever color I use to make it look like the seafloor, right? Trying to get the paint in there without getting it all over the model. That's going to be, usually painting the base is like, oh, well, let's just do that. Almost an afterthought. And it's really easy and straightforward. But in this case, it might almost be as difficult as painting the spots is going to be. I haven't had a situation yet where it turned out one of these things I was painting turned out so badly that I just said, nope, toss it, put it in the toss bin, or in the, this is a monstrosity. And that's the explanation. It looks like that because it's a monstrosity. I haven't had one go so badly yet that that's been the case, but who knows? This might be a first. Okay, well, this dries pretty quickly. I want to be a little cautious before I start putting another coat on, because sometimes putting another coat on will pull the old one away, like it dissolves itself. I'm impatient, so I'll just start doing that. Yeah, you can see immediately that a second coat provides better coverage. But I can see also immediately that it's going to require a third one. Still doesn't cover as well as I would like, and so a lot of the gray is still showing through, and I don't want to put too much paint on it on each coat, because then it'll just show blobs of paint, right? To watch this, the paint's building up and drying on the brush. So as I'm looking at this isn't bad. The color actually is going to look pretty decent as a base coat. What I might try is, I think I'll do this. Got a little piece of paper here. Is I'm going to, at some point in the near future, make a paint swatch on this piece of paper, and after it dries, I'm going to see what happens if I dry brush it with a couple of different alternative colors. Okay, so what I'm kind of aiming for is to tone down the yellow just a little bit by dry brushing on a very, very little bit of one of the more beige colors. Yeah, the gray primer works really well with like the blues and the grays and the browns and even the greens. I mean, it just, because those paints cover pretty well, and the gray primer works just fine. But when I'm doing a base coat of the yellow white range of colors, like the buff or the ivory, like the ivory I used on the goose, or the yellow on this. Like, if this were white underneath, it would actually look pretty good right now. But that isn't what happens. So buttons. This time that's going to take a little bit longer to dry. I almost forgot to do this. I mean, you can see that right here that I'm painting on white paper. And just, even though it's not covering terribly much better than it did on the octopus, it just looks different. Something to think about is I do have some white primer now. I bought it for the Apollo, which is white on white on white. It's molded in white plastic. Seam filling is all done with white plastic putty. The primer is white, and the top coat is white. So there's that. Okay, I'll let that dry. We're going to watch paint dry here. Nothing more exciting, right? That's why the cliche is there, right? The cliche of watching paint dry or watching grass grow. Cliche means that you're doing something really, really boring. Well, that's what's happening here. Is we're just very boringly watching paint dry. I can use the plural because if you're watching and I'm watching, that's a we. I want to get my color chart out again, and I want to do that without knocking the octopus over. So I'm going to move the octopus there. I'm slightly less likely to knock it over. I probably should move this because I'm going to set this down and it almost certainly gets gucked up in the paint. Put over it this dark sand. See, the buff is kind of nice, but it needs a little yellow. So this dark sand has a little yellow in it. So I could try that. The ivory is too white. It's just too bright. And it'll just make it look lighter. I might try it. I might try the ivory. Definitely the dark sand. The bone white's a possibility. And then these colors, I'm using this one for the suckers, I think, because that looks really close to the color on the picture I got. So this one is called, all these flesh tones aren't flesh tones. I don't get it, but they're nice, kind of nice browns. I'm going to try bronze flesh tone, bone white, and dark sand. See if I can remember those colors, right? Yeah, find them at the same time. Looking at color. Dark like sand. And gone. Here I am looking for colors. I've used that fairly often. Sure, he would have put it. He's not in with the oranges and the yellows. Just rotating this thing. I should show this to you because it's really cool. I will show it to you in a while after I'm done poking around. There it is. So these are the three colors. No, I said I would use ivory also. And maybe I will. I'm pulling all of these colors out of here. And that means that I have to try to figure out how to put them back again. So let me, what's who saying? Hi, who? Yes. That's a good idea. We could do that. We could have watching paint dry and grass grow. You could get a little pot. It doesn't have to be big, just a small pot, and fill it with grass seed, and then just watch it grow. There we go. So let me show this to you. I'm going to move the camera. I never know what will happen when I move the camera. There we go. So Alexis, our dungeon master who does the 3D printing and stuff. So we got these spools from the PLA, okay? And then she custom made these inserts. They're two of them, one on each side. So they come together and they're epoxy glued in the middle, and designed it so that the hole here exactly fits one of these bottles, and it's tilted back a little bit. It's not just horizontal, it's tilted back so that, they don't fall out. And then also fabricated a spindle. You'll see it up here. These stack on top of each other too, and then it rotates. And it's a really cool thing. And it holds all of the paints that we've got. And if I put them away, it keeps it all neat and clean. And if I don't, then it's a mess, where they're all stacked up all over the work surface. Oh, okay, that wasn't that good. What happened was that there's this attachment here that had been really loose and now was tightened up, and I just loosened it up again. So here, watch paint dry. This is drying. It's not dry yet. You can always test it like sticking your finger in it. That's not a good way to test things. Don't do that. That's not professional. Okay. But I did. That's how I do things, because I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional for two reasons. One is that I don't get paid. So that's kind of one definition of being a professional or something, is getting paid to do it. And I'm definitely not that. The other is, being good at it, being good enough at it so that someone would pay you. So I don't meet either of those criteria. If I were better at this, I think I would still not be paid. I'm pretty sure that would be the case, that I still would not be paid. Okay, the paint is drying on the octopus, and you can see that, except for here, where the paint got really thick, it's going to need yet another coat. And where the paint got thick here, for a reason, I don't know, it's how the brush went, it's still wet. But I'm going to just have to keep putting yellow paint on this, at least another coat. Fortunately, the lumpy, bumpy surface of this is not that important in terms of how it will end up looking. What will be important is how well I do with the really cool spots. I'm not horribly optimistic about how that will go. I'm going to start with the lightest color. What I'm going to try is testing dry brushing on the yellow to see if it just see how it looks. I mean, I'll just how does it look? And I don't want to be squeezing out a lot of paint. I mean, it's just like put a little drop here, and then put the brush on the paper towel, and oh, that was really smooth. Yeah, do two things with one hand, and yeah, that didn't work too well. So who else joined in? Ola, hi. Thanks for joining in. Are you going to be doing a building? Okay. Oh, wow. That's right. She does traveling competitions. That's really amazing. I do not know when you have time to eat or sleep. You've got a job. Okay. You're taking your kids to all sorts of practice, figure skating, and I forget what else. I mean, you're just constantly doing that kind of thing and doing builds. And it's not just doing builds, but doing all the editing necessary to get your stream to work. I'm really impressed by your ability to do way too much. That makes it light. I'm going from lighter to darker here in terms of the colors that I might just brush over. But it's kind of a nice color. You can see here the difference. This is on gray primer. It's got two coats on it, and it still looks kind of irregular and scuzzy. And I just have one coat on white here, and yeah. These things are modeled in gray plastic, and the white primer doesn't really cover that much either. Yeah, that's what you need. Is you need to double the size of your day. This is a much darker color. To get a dry brush, one has to have a dry brush. They're reddish. That's kind of a surprise how that ended up looking. So I don't know if I'm going to actually end up doing this at all. But what I'm thinking is that, show this here, try not to knock it over. It's just to change the color of the octopus just a little bit. So it's not just plain old bright yellow. I'm not sure how much the base coat's going to matter once I very successfully put on the spots with the bright blue outline. No, I know it's not going to be. Thanks for dropping in. I appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking even a few minutes of your incredibly busy days to say hello. So drive safely, and I hope the competition goes really well. Thanks so much, and I will see you in 2 weeks because I'll be gone next week and most of the week after. But congratulations in advance to your daughter and her competition. This color might be okay. It's got a little yellow in it, so it won't change the color that maybe not that much. I should keep the color out. This was the dark sand. This was the color that I thought might work the best. That kind of looks good. I kind of like how that turned out. Well, we'll try this other one too and just see. It's not going to be going on anytime soon because I have to put a third coat on the octopus and maybe even a fourth one. I might end up using like the entire bottle of paint trying to get this to be covered. But this lesson says definitely, if the color is going to be yellows or beiges, use white primer. Even if the white primer doesn't cover terribly well, it'll give a. It's gonna. I mean, it's not going to take 4 coats like this is taking. This is really orange. You'll have to see what it looks like when it's dry. You know, it might look okay. Base, the yellow base. Find out. Kind of makes it look kind of brownish. No, it's not. It's kind of not what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. Thinking, thinking the dark sand because it doesn't. I want to do it again. The dark sand one more time. And I'm going to kind of poke it on. I think I'm going to try that. It, it's still quite yellow coming through, but it's more natural looking. You know, kind of. And if it doesn't work, I'll just paint over it. Right. Yeah. There's the thing. Test. There's the one I'm going to use. I'll put that here. And here's the yellow that I'm going to keep putting on the octopus because as I discovered it, even if I try to dry brush another color on there, unless the base coat is really solid, in terms of its color, it's not going to work. So it's one spot here where it got really thick, which is probably still kind of wet. that's what I want the whole thing to look like. And so far, it's definitely not. Question will become just how far do I go in terms of putting more and more paint on this thing without, just having blobs of paint everywhere. Each coat makes it look better, but it's still not great. I think this, as each coat gets thicker, it takes a little longer to dry. This is covering kind of okay. It's not too bad at this point. Better than it was after the first coat. It's going to have to dry a little bit longer because the paint it's thicker now. Even if the undercoats were dry, the solvent in here will dissolve that paint just a little bit. So it's like it has to dry through like 3 layers of paint now instead of one. Like the first one went on it dried really fast. And the next one didn't, especially where where it was thicker. Maybe it's okay that a little bit of gray shows through. I'm not sure. I want to see how this looks after it dries and then make a decision about whether I want to just keep putting yet even more yellow paint on it. And maybe I will. Or maybe at that point I will get what was it, the bone white? No, the dark sand. I'll get the dark sand out and do some poking at dry brushing. Not brushing across. I don't want it. It'll give it striations. But if we go like that, use that for shading. Again, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a trained artist, so I just make stuff up until it kind of works. I could learn, but I'm old. I don't learn new things. I guess that's what, that's what adds a little bit of excitement to relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons is you just never know what's going to go wrong. What's going to be the oops moment today? Trying to check to make sure that there aren't too many places that aren't painted. There's one. Yeah, way underneath there. That's not painted, but I'm guessing that if this ever shows up, there's not going to be a camera angle that's going to notice that. It'll look just like shadows or something. But I think that tentacles are coming on okay. I might actually give the body here a fourth coat before I do the dry brushing on it. But this has got to dry for a while before I can do that. So let's set it here and watch the paint dry. What can I do in the interim? What I will do in the interim is give kind of a rundown of the situation. Just do short. Brought to you every hour on the 15 minutes. Every hour on the quarter hour. There we go. So here's the news du jour. Not necessarily in the same order as the first reading. The news du jour is that there isn't any music because there's a dispute of some sort going on with Alexander Nakarada and his music. Nakarada composed it and publishes it and lets people use it. And we've been using it successfully for years now. But recently have been starting to get content ID hits on YouTube. And if there's enough of them, then the YouTube, it just disappears from YouTube and people can't enjoy relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons because of that. So until that's sorted out, and I've only heard bits of it, I've heard a fair amount of it, but I can't say I understand all of it, is apparently there, I don't know, it might involve intellectual property theft, it might involve, I have no clue, but what it does is it triggers the algorithm on Twitch and YouTube. And so until we figure that out, whether it's very specific Nakarada tracks or whether it's all of it or who knows what, I'll just continue to be vague. I don't know. But until that's resolved, we're doing these streams without music. I don't know that anybody listens to a podcast of this because why? It's painting, right? So it's supposed to be visual. But it's going to be without music last Wednesday and today. And until we resolve what the issue is, whatever that might be. The other bit of news is that I am going to be traveling again. Just can't stay at home, can't sit still, it seems. But I'll be gone for almost 2 weeks, leaving on Monday. So there won't be any streams next week at all. And then I'll be back the week after that. I think I get back really, really late Wednesday. I'm not even really sure. But if I am conscious and not totally jet lagged, I'll try to stream 2 weeks from today. That's what I'll try to get back. And we'll continue to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for just a little while until the next trip. And the next trip was planned way in advance. That's to see the solar eclipse, and I'm looking forward to that. Let's see, what else is new? What else is new is that there will be fewer minifig painting sessions. So instead of having Submarine Wednesday, we might just be having Apollo Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with brief appearances by the submarine until it finally gets done. It is so close to being done that if I just sat down and worked at it, I probably could knock it off in like an afternoon, but I want to keep doing it on the stream because why not? I might as well torment all of you as I torment myself with the failure to complete the submarine. The last Wednesday, and I've been, they're just little bits of the submarine that need to be done. And so they don't take up an entire stream anymore. So that's why I started working on the Apollo model. But there are still bits of the submarine that need to be done, like one that I'll show you after break, which was a great disappointment. It was one of those, really, that sigh. It was a very long sigh moment. It could have been a naughty word moment, but it was more of a disappointment. So I just let out a really long sigh when I saw the problem. Because on Wednesday, I carefully masked the fold down half of the hull of the submarine, the one that's attached to the submarine's base. And I thought I had prepped the base really well. There's two parts that come together, and I got the seams, I thought, clear. But what happened was the very bottom of the base, and you'll see this, didn't line up correctly. There was just a tiny gap, not really a gap, but a height difference. And so I filed that down, so I thought it was flat, but I didn't sand it enough. It's not smooth, and so it just looks like someone filed it down. And after I painted it with this sort of semi-gloss paint, satin, I guess a satin finish paint, it really showed, which then presented a huge warning for the Apollo, because the Apollo has lots of seams on it as well that need to be very, very carefully polished out, or else they're going to show, because that's going to be painted a glossy white. And those kinds of file marks, just little scratches or whatever, are just going to show, the tiniest scratches. So fortunately, I have a fairly large supply of sandpaper that goes from like 200 grit to 6,000 grit. I think at least 3,000, maybe more, at least like 200 to 3,000. So we may end up having relaxing sanding with Dyson Dungeons, working on the Apollo, trying to get those seams not to show. Now, having learned my lesson with the base of the submarine, which is fine. I mean, they're fairly small areas that can be polished. So what was I going with that? Besides waiting for the paint to dry so I can put another coat on the back end of here. Where I was going with that is that there's not going to be a lot of minifigs being painted, because we don't need any more in the show. And they're kind of, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and their paint is set up. But I am going to go for, as I'm going to ask Alexis, because this was already done, this is already set up to be printed, is I want a flock of sheep. I think this came out really cool. It's, and I'm going to ask for like different sizes of these. Maybe this is probably, a little bit smaller than a regular, like a real sheep would be compared to our D&D figures, but they're really fast and easy to paint, and I think they look kind of fun. And it'd be fun, I think, to have a flock of sheep in our Dungeons and Dragons show. I really think it would be. So, yeah, I wish I remembered what color I painted the base so that they would all have the same base on it. Because if it's a flock, you want them to look like they're all, part of the same, on the same place. I know I used the green wash on this, but I can't remember what the base color was. I think it was sick green. I think that's the color I used. Anyway, I don't know for sure. I'll have to figure that out. Anyway, I'm going to try to get Alexis to print a whole bunch of sheep, and then I would spend at least one half, if not longer, of a stream painting of a flock of sheep. Otherwise, I'll be working on the Apollo with little interludes now and then, working on the submarine. So what I covered the music issue and my schedule, and why I'm not going to be painting minifigs, but I'll be working on the Apollo, and hopefully sometime yet this year completing the submarine. I had projected initially, as the year started, that I would finish the submarine by the end of the first quarter, which would be the end of March. And in fact, I probably would have, except for the fact that this other trip came up and is taking an entire 2 weeks away of streaming time. So, that and other things like the flaw on the base that needs to be sanded out, that will end up taking a half hour of time. That kind of stuff is keeping it from being done. So I've got maybe, I don't know, like an hour's worth of work, 2 hours worth of work to do on the thing that will now be spread out into April because I've lost most of March to the travel. There was a fourth thing. Okay. Models, working on models instead of minifigs, except maybe a flock of sheep. We'll see. The music issue, my streaming schedule. I don't know. There was a fourth thing that I talked about when the show first started, but now I can't remember what it was. I'm going to put a fourth coat. I don't think I need it on the tentacles, maybe. I don't know. Definitely on the body, though. It's still just not covered very well. Yeah, that was a lesson learned. I don't know if it was news, but it was a lesson learned, which is when using yellows and tans as a base coat, use a white primer. Those of you who know what you're doing knew that already. Those of me who didn't have white primer at the time this was painted only had gray primer because that's what we've been using on everything, especially the submarine, because it worked really well on the submarine. But those of you who do painting and know what you're doing would already have known that. But those of you who don't know what you're doing, like me, learned it along with me. So there was a lesson for the naive. I could have said for the ignorant, but that would be me, and I don't want to just say I'm ignorant. I just want to say I'm naive. I have much to learn. So eventually the submarine will be completely done, and I will then put it away somewhere where it will sit and collect dust, which will be quite a problem because the interior is highly detailed. You can't dust it. It's also fragile. So unless somehow it's protected from dust, like using enclosed shelf space or whatever, and I don't have one that will work, it's just going to sit and collect dust and then become so dusty it'll become unrecognizable. But eventually that'll get done. The Apollo model is turning out to be way more of a challenge than I had expected or hoped, just in terms of the way that the parts are not fitting very well. The gaps need to be filled in. And as I discovered, if I'm going to be painting a glossy white, I better make sure that the polishing of the gaps that are closed is well done. Okay, that's enough yellow paint on that now. I'm not going to put any more on it. So we're all going to sit here and watch the last coat, even if it isn't great. It's the last one dry, and when that's dry, I'm going to get the dark sand paint, and if you bring this back, I'm going to dry brush a little bit on here. And it won't make it less yellow, but it'll make it less yellow. I mean, brilliantly yellow. It'll just tone it down a little bit, make it look a little bit more sort of natural, I guess I'll call it. I'm not going to put a lot on there. I'm just going to stipple it on just to kind of tone it down and shade it a little bit. And after that is done, I'm probably going to try to paint the suckers. This this color. I've got a color that almost matches that. And they're all underneath here. I don't have to put my head magnifier on. I'm just going to tiny little bits of paint on a brush and just see how that goes. And then I'm going to paint spots. I might either, like on this, it's just rings, okay, on the base color. On other pictures of the blue striped octopus, there's they're a slightly different color, okay, a little darker. So I'm going to paint, see if I can find a color of paint spots and then paint the rings around them. So after putting like tons of yellow paint on this, I don't know, it might turn into a disaster at the end. We'll see. If it does, then it will go into the hidden vault of monstrosities. Yeah, I just don't know about the rings. You know, it would be the spots on some of the pictures are like slightly greenish, but that just might be like an artifact of the fact that it's blue on yellow. I'm going to put the picture back here so you can see what I'm talking about. So the rings on some of the pictures of this kind of octopus are around a spot that's darker than the body color. Okay. And it's like I said, it's sort of grayish greenish, but it might just be an artifact. Because when I look at this one, okay, the color inside and the color outside are really kind of the same. And it might just be an artifact of the blue pigment kind of bleeding into or combining with the yellow on the inside of the ring, which, you know, the blue and the yellow would make a greenish tint. Like down here, the insides are dark. You can see the insides of the rings, that they're just darker. It's like a dark spot with a ring around it. I think I'm just going to try to make the rings, you know, just keep layering paint on top of paint. Might not work, and I don't have a color. I don't have a color that would work well on the inside there. You know, none of the greens are going to work. I'd have to do like custom mixing, and I'm not going to do that kind of thing. So after this dries, I'm going to do the dry brushing on it because I do want to tone it down and make it look a little bit more like this than the bright yellow, because that's way too bright. And then I'm going to try to do something with the suckers just so that they show a little bit with this color. That color being the color, I forgot which one it was. I pulled out other colors, and now yeah, this one. I'll put that. I'm going to put that there, separate from these, which I should just put away so that they're out of the way because I'm not going to be using them. Okay, this is still not dry enough to mess with. So what I'm going to do is, yes, I'm going to put paint colors away. Thing to do. Paint away. Go. Well, it's about putting labels here, but it turned out not to be necessary. And I guess the colors don't have to go exactly where they were before. And they're not. They're just going to go in places. I'm just putting them in places. And I'll find them. The next time I need the colors, I'm just going to just like spin that thing around until I kind of find the color I'm looking for. I need to let that dry, and then I want to do some dry brushing on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the submarine thing, the submarine that I spray painted, and show you what the situation is, and maybe even start working on it a little bit. I'm not sure, but just sometimes when you're waiting for paint to dry, the paint has to dry, and the timing isn't perfect. And this is a live stream, and there's no editing, so there. Okay, so this is the fold down part of the submarine. There's a submarine hull behind here, behind all this tape. So you can see it. I did this on Wednesday, and the important part of the masking was down here, okay, where all the paint is, because that had to be carefully masked because that's where all the paint went. And the rest of this, as you can see, it kind of spatters around. And, it's painted on both sides. And it came out, oh, that didn't cover very well. Yeah, it was laying like this, but so that's going to need another coat anyway. And then the hull of the submarine with all of the detail in it rests in here. There's a piece of tape on here that when I peel it off, there will be bare plastic, which will then attach to the hull of the submarine. But the part that's a problem, this is where it was disappointing, okay, is, look at it this way. This is how you're going to see it, is that if you can see it here, yeah, see where the two parts came together? I filled that in and sanded it down, but it still leaves, in this case, it's like a little ridge. It's almost like the gap didn't get filled. And in all cases, there's file marks and stuff on it that, with this sort of satin paint, I'm surprised. I really thought I was careful and sprayed that, but I knew that was going to happen. And the light wasn't all that good, but there's this part here that just wasn't painted very well, so that'll get more coat. But what's disappointing is I thought I filled that in and filed it down nicely, but the file marks show, and the ridge on the vertical part isn't that big a deal. But down here, it looks like two pieces came together, and I wanted it to look like one piece. So I'm going to try sanding this. It'll have to be repainted. But basically what there is there's kind of a divot there now where I filed it down. And there's still a seam showing here. And I don't know how deep that goes, whether it will sand out or whether I need to put filler on it or not. So I've got these different grits of sandpaper, and I don't like how that looked. It's really, really disappointing that after the prep work I did, that it still shows the seam like that. And there's even a gap there at the bottom where the filler didn't fill. So, I'm not sure how much of that I'm going to do on the stream or not. wanted to show you what the problem was. And with the Apollo, like the part that I'm working on now, is the escape tower, and the escape tower is, it's about that long, and it's a cylinder made up of two halves that have come together, and it's got a seam all the way down the side, and I don't want that seam to show when it's painted. So I did some filling and some filing and some sanding, but it's clear that I'm really going to have to be compulsive about the filler and the subsequent sanding, and beyond sanding, polishing, to make sure that the seam doesn't show down the side of the rocket. And that'll be that. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here just, to test some of these little bits of paper. Because I'm waiting for that to dry, and let me test it. Yeah, it's still tacky. These are all my different grits. This is 600 grit. I've got some that's less. Yeah, there's a little piece of that. And then there's some others in here, 1,000 and 2,000. Okay, those are for like polishing. 800. And the other thing is, I don't want to just let this prop this up with something. I don't want the weight to rest against the hinges because they're pretty fragile. But I also don't want to be holding it up the whole time I'm trying to use the sandpaper. Anyway, I'm just going to do this just to show you what I'm going to have to be doing, right? There's a little piece of balsa wood here that I am using as a sanding block, and that didn't work. Not at all. Okay, this is the rump stage of relaxing painting with dice and dungeons. It's like a rump. I'm just going to hold it. So part of it is I need to sand off the paint, right? That has to happen before I can even begin to sand down the plastic. I could use a coarser grit, but no, not initially. So this is the kind of thing I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be using little bits of sandpaper, a sanding block or my finger, and trying to sand out the seam that shows, or in the other case, the little gouge that shows. See, as I do this, it disappears. I can't see it once it's matte. And then polish it as much as I can, so that gap doesn't show anymore. And since I have to put another coat of paint on this anyway because of the part under here that isn't painted, yeah, anyway, this is the kind of thing that needs to be done yet. Ole Brager, who comes and joins us every now and then, see if I can see the seam. The seam shows because there's a little bit of brown paint in there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little brown paint where the seam is, because it's below the level of the part that I'm sanding. Built a Dungeons and Dragons table and spent hours and hours and hours sanding, and decided that people didn't want to see him sanding on his stream. So he edited it down to the point where It was like 10 seconds of sanding. Well, you're not going to have that. What you're going to have is just hours of sanding and polishing, especially on the Apollo model, especially the part that I'm working on now, because it has to be done, and I have to do something on the stream. Hi, Coop. Thanks for joining in. I should talk about grass growing because it's more interesting than watching this. Yeah, I can barely even see that, but when the paint got on it, the seam was really obvious. And now I can't get the sandpaper there. I'll be taking a break fairly soon because this is just not interesting at all. But I wanted to show everybody the situation of what I'm trying to fix and why. So this is the base to the submarine model. And I thought I had really nicely filled and made to disappear the seam between the two halves of the base. But it turned out that I didn't. That when I painted it, the seam ended up showing as it shows now. And so I'm just sanding and filling and filing. I'm going to try this. Yeah, see, you put water on it to make it gloss, but it still doesn't show whether the seam shows or not. And then there's a gap down here that needs to be filled. So I can't even feel it, so I don't know why it showed up like that. I mean, seriously, I run my fingernail across there, and I can't feel any gap like one would expect if you could see it, right? If you could see it, you should be able to feel it, and it just didn't show up. So I don't know. I don't know when I've got it done right. You can see the seam because there's dark paint on that, but anyway, that's what I need to do, and then I need to polish it and feather it, of course. Feather it into the paint that's already on there because I don't want to see a ridge where the painted and unpainted parts go. What I really need here is this is like fixing a like a stone dent or something on a car where you want to just touch it up and not be able to see it anymore. It's all sanding and polishing and stuff like that. But there's a little gap down at the bottom that I thought I had filled in that isn't filled in, that I'm just going to fill in again and, try to sand that down later too. Anyway, I'm going to just sort of squeeze away at that with sandpaper of various grits and then polish it. It's just a little bit of plastic putty that I'm going to push down into the gap. And hopefully we'll fill it. So I thought I was done with this. Okay, I'll just say that that's kind of the upshot of this. I thought I was done with the base, and that what I'd be doing today would be an unveiling. I'd be taking all the paper and masking tape off and saying, look at this wonderful thing that happened. Look at how it all turned out and how nice it looks. And then I saw these flaws, and it's not ready yet. So this is why the submarine will never be finished, because there's always something like this. Let's see what it's like on the other side. The other side still has a little bit of a gap, but basically what I'm looking at is there's a divot there. and a change in the texture, and that needs to be polished. So the other side of the base here that you can't see because it's under the submarine, basically just needs to be polished. And then I'll do that, and then I'll spray it again, particularly back over here where it just never got covered. Anyway, I wanted to show that to you. It's just really something. There's always something with this submarine, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So yeah, as I was saying, I was hoping today that I would do an unveiling by taking all the masking off, and showing the really nice clean lines and how the base is painted and how the rest of the submarine isn't. And then that turned out not to be the case because there's just these little cosmetic issues that I find kind of spoils it. But yeah, when I get back, when I get back from my next trip, which will be around the 21st or so. Sorry, I'm just going off screen here so that I can set this down. Or so from this next trip because there's always traveling going on, always. I'll be just polishing that down and repainting it and hoping it looks better. And even if it's not perfect at that point, I'm going to have to say I need to move on. The rest of the stuff that needs to be done on the submarine is another set of masking. I need to mask the inside of it, the part that is actually the cutaway part of the submarine, the whole point of it. I need to do that and then spray paint the hull. And then there's some little bits of assembly that need to be done, just tiny little bits, like reinstalling the periscopes and snorkels. And, attaching the propeller and one of the dive planes. There's probably some prep work I need to do on that as well before I spray paint it. Now that I discovered that there's an issue with how the seams show, there is a part of the deck that I had a really difficult time installing at all. There's a little bit of a ridge between that and the rest of the hull. And now that I've tried to file and sand that down with different levels of filler, but now that it's clear that I need to do more on that to make it seamless before I spray paint the whole thing. Otherwise, I'll end up doing like I have just doing here, is spray painting it all and saying, oh, that does not look good. And then, having to sand it all down again and then repaint it. And I'd rather do it just once if I can. Yeah, so I'm going to be taking a break now. I'll be back in sort of a half hour. I say a half hour, it usually turns out to be longer. It's just the way it is. And then I'm going to try to paint some of the suckers on here. Underneath here, the suckers are nicely molded in. And some of those, they should show since the model went through the trouble of producing them. And then I'm going to dry brush this color here all over this so it's a little less blazing yellow. Okay. I'm just going to take some and I'm going to use the technique of touching the end of the dry brush to it so it's not streaky but spotty. And I picked the colors for those two things. So yeah, painting the suckers is going to be a challenge. They're like underneath, right? They're all underneath there. They kind of show. So I'm going to try to get the ones like along here, along the edges where they're really quite obvious. I want to do that before I do the dry brushing because if I have to touch up with the yellow, I want to do that while it's still not too layered. Anyway, that's what's going to happen after the break. Thanks for watching so far. When I get back from break, I will repeat the bits of news about what's going to be streaming when and why we don't have any music. So I'll see you less around 12:30. Oh yeah, and then we spring forward on Sunday. We'll still be, once I come back and start doing relaxing painting again with, I hope, some regularity. We'll find out. It will be daylight saving time, which means that we will spring forward and the clock on the wall will be right again. What I mean by that is the clock that I look up, when I look up over there, there's a clock on the wall because I can't always read the computer screen without my glasses. The clock on the wall will be correct again because it never fell back. So because it never fell back, it doesn't need to spring forward because it's already having been sprung. Yeah. This is Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, where things like that are said. I'll be back in about a half an hour, continuing to work on what I hope will end up looking kind of like a blue-striped octopus. Thanks, and see you soon. Be back a little bit later. Well, back from break. Yeah, late, like usual. What the heck? It's always late back from break. Yeah. Try to refocus on what was going on here. Refocusing at a certain age is, an uncertain sort of thing. But now I remember doing relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, and I was going to get this color out and mix it up and put it in a little well here and take the teeny tiny brush and try to paint some of the little sucker things on the bottom of the octopus. And then I was going to get this color out and do some dry brushing on it to make it look more like this than the really bright yellow it is now. And if I feel ambitious, I might get the pearlescent paints out and see if I can paint little circles like this. I'll be painting the dark blue ones. And if I'm not, then I'll do something else. I don't know, like get the sandpaper out again and while away on the submarine base, or maybe pull out the Apollo or something, or just end early. I'm not sure. But what I didn't do during break was I didn't get a snack. And so my blood sugar is going to be a little bit on the downside. If I suddenly go quiet, it's probably because, well, whatever. So in order to paint these suckers, I need to put on my head magnifier so I can actually see them, because they're pretty tiny and they're hard to reach. And I'm not going to paint all of them, but I'm going to try to paint all the ones along the edges that show, so that it, they look good. It's kind of like the picture here, just along the bottom edges. You can't hear it, but the vortex spinner is shaking up the paint and trying to stir it up so that the pigment and the solvent are together. I didn't do what I was thinking. Yeah, one more thing where I can't remember what I was going to do. I was using this plastic putty to fill in the gaps on the models that I've been working on. It's been working kind of okay, but it doesn't dry hard. Okay, what I mean is that when it dries, it still is kind of flexible, and that's not really helpful when trying to sand it down to a nice smooth finish, or especially trying to feather an edge, that might be a little bit higher or lower than the other, and just trying to feather it so that they're seamless. So I bought this other stuff that I was going to test, and I could have tested it right there on the. Oh my, yeah, things always look different with the head magnifiers. In this particular case, it's the yellow base coat. It's like there's whole areas under here that I thought I was getting that I didn't. So after I'm done painting, man, it's really very obvious there under here. I just didn't rotate it well enough when I was doing the three coats, right? Almost four. This is a more than a sigh moment. I'm going to be really grumpy moment. Really grumpy about not getting that painted very well. So I am being really grumpy right now in terms of like way under there. Okay, that's fine, but just here, it's just really obvious that it needed to be painted and it wouldn't, and it isn't. Well, I got this color paint out. It seems to be going okay, so I'm going to paint suckers. Of the tentacles, and then get the yellow paint out again. And I'm going to be impatient and just glob a lot of paint on really thick so that I don't have to do like four coats like I was doing before. But oh my, oh my, oh my. And then it's just everywhere. These other spots under here. All I needed to do was like turn it like this, right? All I needed to do was do that. And it would have been obvious. Really not happy about that. Really not happy about the ounce of prevention. All I needed to do was have an ounce of prevention. Just think ahead a little bit, put the head magnifiers on, rotate the model in the directions that it needed to be rotated. Even there, you can see it directly from the front. Really amazing. Truly amazing level of failure. Okay, I'm just going to stop this now and go back to the yellow and try to fix that mess. Oh well, I was expecting to get much further along on this than I am now. That's me being frustrated. I just threw the brushes. It's like really just unhappy about that. I mean, it's bad enough that the paint didn't cover and I needed to do all these different coats and then I got all this globby yellow paint on everything. That was frustrating enough, but to find out that I just missed whole large areas of it by not rotating it appropriately or wearing these so I could see what I was doing. You know, and they're underneath, so maybe I can get enough yellow on them. One coat will be sufficient. It was like the whole side of that didn't get painted. Here. Oh, very, very fair. Yeah, seriously, like on a suckers are getting painted over with the right color. It was working pretty well. But then I discovered that the base coat was just fail. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most fail. This was a solid 8. Seriously. In terms of failure. So yeah, the lesson of use white primer if trying to paint one of these sort of, it's not going to cover no matter what you do colors. Okay. There was that lesson. There's the make sure you rotate all sorts of different directions. And even though it's inconvenient and looks and feels funny, put on your head magnifiers so that you can see your failure to paint the base coat on obvious areas. Rotate the model way more than you think is necessary. Get to that. It's not going to really show, but still. Wow. Yeah. And then go on your painting stream and say, that is why this is not a how-to show. This is a learning by exclusion show. It's like, if you really want to do a really good job painting your octopus, don't do what I'm doing because it's fail. And it is. Okay, well, now I have to let paint dry again. And then I'll get out the other. That's going to be gone. And then make another effort to paint the suckers. And then maybe do the dry brushing today, or maybe I'll just go. This is just not working. I'm just going to give up. This is expressing frustration painting. with Dyson Dungeons Friday edition. Okay. Well, I globbed the paint on like I shouldn't have because of my impatience with trying to fix this. So I just put it on really heavy so it'll cover. I don't know. I'll probably find more spots when I start painting the suckers again. Blobs of paint here. Why won't it cover that spot? Okay, well, I can take these off while I wait for that to dry. Thought I would have, painting the suckers with the tiny little brush was going okay there until I looked at what I was doing and saw fail. Talked about this before, and I have actually talked with Alexis about programming this and the Stream Deck here, which has become highly simplified because me. So it's like push this to start, push this for a break. There's two green buttons there that have to do with the music that we're not using. One that says start break and one that says end break. So I know what to do there. But I've asked for an button. So that if I made a mistake, like if I was painting the suckers on the bottom of the octopus and I got took the paint and went and splotted it all over the back of the octopus here, I could push the button because that was an but I also need a seriously that I did that button, which is more than an it's like the one that you push when you just did something wrong or failed to do something right. Like in this case, that's what happened is I failed to do something right. By actually painting things that needed to be painted. Okay. That was, as they say, an epic fail. I need an epic fail button. And what I was asking for is that when I push the button, like with there would be a little graphic, some sort of amusing graphic that would pop up on the screen that would symbolize the ness of the situation, and the epic fail button would do something similar. The really cool part about having that button on the Stream Deck is that the Stream Deck is I have to reach across. Okay, I have to reach across everything to get to the Stream Deck because it's over there off screen. Is that it gives me the opportunity to knock stuff over. So it would not only be a recognition that I did something that required an but that it also could create an on the way to signaling the Yeah. Well, I'm going to put these on and see if I can do any sucker painting. How dry the paint is, but can't get much worse than it is. At some point, it's just like, I guess what I should ask for too is like, have an button and an epic fail button. But for special occasions, maybe what I really need is a naughty word button. Mm-hmm. Push that, and you know how they do in cartoons. They asterisks and at signs and all sorts of stuff. Push that button, and that graphic would show up. It'd be like an old Batman TV series kind of thing. You know, half the show would be just all these little graphics that would pop up on the screen representing the situation. Largely had to deal with things not going that well. But that's the nature of relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, is that that I could see it but not reach it. But then when I tried to set it up so I could reach it, I couldn't see it. Hmm. Why is that? The suckers that were carefully designed and printed onto the model here. They're nice. I have to remember that this yellow paint is really kind of a disaster. There has to be a better way of doing it to get better coverage without having to put 4 coats on. There's a lot of paint on this thing. Bad the music isn't playing, because I start going quiet as I'm trying to do these things that are kind of a pain to do and are. This has been a grumpy day. It started out, when I said that there have been studies to determine whether the weather really does make a difference in how you feel, and how the evidence has been inconclusive, except my personal testimony is that the front that has come through, it's raining now, the change in air pressure definitely made a difference, and especially with these are all the spots that I needed to get to. Can't, yeah, I can't focus on them this way. Well, my testimony is that yes, indeed, the change in air pressure made things achy. So I started out complaining about feeling achy. And complaining about, I can't believe I missed all those spots. I paid to put the base coat on. I knew that was going to happen sometime. Fortunately, this model is really pretty solid, and it didn't have any like sword blades and things that could have broken off, which has happened in the past. I put a model on there, and it's got a sword or a bow and arrow that falls off. They break, and usually when they break, they snap off and go flying into oblivion. And that's really the case here. If a sword blade like breaks off or something. You know, I can hear it hit, like little tink sound. But it disappears. It goes into the land of missing socks. Just gone. And so there's been multiple times when I should have been able to very easily find the thing that broke off. And I crawl around on the floor and I use a flashlight and all sorts of stuff. And then I can't find it. What is this? And there's a piece of plastic or drying paint or something. You can't really see the suckers very much, but where you can see them, they are now painted the official blue striped octopus sucker color. This yellow base coat really is, I really don't like it. I hope the dry brushing makes it look better. At a distance, you know, like this, or the camera's at a distance is probably not too bad, but looking at it up close, especially to these magnifiers and even touching it, it's still kind of tacky. I am not really liking it. Okay, I'm going to be using this long, flat, this is a good one for dry brushing. It's got a nice flat tip on it. It's kind of stiff, okay, and it's large. And so it lets me do that pretty effectively. And I'm going to take these off because, you know, I'm going to do that. And mix up the dry brush color. Then I'm hoping it ends up looking better after I do this. It does on the sample. I made this sample sheet here with different colors. This one didn't work very well. It's too red. This one's just too opaque. This one's too light. This one is okay. So this one is this one. I'll give this a go. Then I'm going to let the paint dry, which shouldn't take too long because it's called dry brushing for a reason. It's almost dry already. There's very little paint that's going on. And this one, this color should dry pretty quickly. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to get out the pearlescent paint, the dark blue, and I'm going to attempt to draw a circle. They're not perfect circles, which is good. They're kind of organically just, you know, circly circles. But I'm going to try to do one with the superfine brush. The paint is not good for this sort of thing. It's very gelatinous. And I'm going to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then the only thing that can be done, well, there's a couple of things that can be done at that point. One of the things that can be done is that I can just sort of scrape off that paint, rebase coat it. So that's going to, where I do this test will probably be like on one of the tentacles. Okay. Like maybe here or something. So that if it really doesn't work, I can just like sand it off or something and start over. If I did it up here, the back of it, it would be harder to do that. Because I'm not sure at all whether I can make those pearlescent paints work. I really would like to. You know, I would like it to work because it would, I mean, it would be shiny. It would be all pearly looking. It would be pretty nice. compared to just the color. But if it doesn't work because the paint is too viscous to be able to use and get it to detail, okay, it has to be a really fine line. And if it just doesn't work, then I'll need to just use the regular acrylics. Okay, I kind of like it's toning it down. It's not making the yellow disappear. It's a little, that's okay. Kind of a before and after by looking at the two. I have to not get too impatient here. If I get too impatient, I have too much paint on the brush, it won't work. But I kind of like the way the yellow still very much shows through, but it's not so glaring, so blazing. Dabbing it on like this because if I tried to like stroke it across, it would just leave streaks. I don't need streaks on the octopus. Okay, so let me take the opportunity here while I'm doing this to reiterate the news du jour. There are various and sundry little bits of news du jour. One bit of news is that I'll be traveling again, and I will be gone starting Monday and not be back until about the 21st. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to stream on the 21st or not. That depends on jet lag. Okay. So just to let you know that I had been planning to do regular streaming Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, more or less 10 until more or less 2, all through the month of March, making great progress on minifigs and submarines and Apollos and all sorts of things like that. But that's not going to happen because I am going away again on a family trip. There's a lot of that happening lately. But as the family is aging, those of you who are aging understand this. Those of you who haven't aged yet will. As the family is aging, it becomes more important all the time, to get together whenever we can. And that's the situation here. So I'll be gone starting Monday, so I won't be streaming next week or most of the week after. And I hope to be back. I hope to be back on the 21st, that Friday, just to say hello and try to remember what I'm doing. Okay, so that's one piece of news. The other piece of news is that the music isn't playing, and that's because I don't know all the technical details, but there is an issue that has come up kind of affecting everybody who's been using the music of Alexander Nakarada. And Alexander Nakarada does wonderful music. And it is even more wonderful because he lets people like us use their music as long as we give appropriate attribution. And in our case, some financial support as well. But for reasons that are obscure to me and maybe to a lot of other people. There have been like these content ID flags on YouTube and the threat of audio muting on Twitch. And what that means is that our streams just, you can't find them. They like take them down. So until that's resolved, and we're hoping it's done fairly soon, there won't be any music on Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. There'll just be me droning on about whatever it is I'm droning. So what do you think? I think that made it look a lot better. It's a little bit splotchy, but that's kind of a natural thing that you would expect, right? It's not that uniform. It's toned down the yellow. Some of the yellow still shows through in bright spots here and there, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I'm going to do the rotating thing again, which is did I miss any real obvious spots? Kind of like the brighter yellow does show through underneath. Sometimes it's like counter shading. That's okay. Yeah, I'm glad I did this. It works in this color. I'm glad I tested the colors too, because I could have picked a color that was definitely not good. Yeah, and let it wobble. It's important for it to wobble. Unlike Weebles. Does anybody remember those? Yeah, unlike Weebles, this does fall down. Okay. I know what I'm going to do next. So I said I needed to find out if these pearlescent paints are going to work for the stripes. I'll show you the picture again in a minute. The brush clean, I might need to do an alcohol bath on that later. So the really cool part about this octopus are these bright blue circles, or, circular sorts of things. And what I was hoping to do is use pearlescent paints to make the dark blue. I've got a dark blue pearlescent, and then use the light blue-green pearlescent to basically make these look like that and to have them be kind of shiny. The pearlescent paint is very viscous. It's almost jelly-like. And it might not work. So what I was talking about doing was maybe experimenting on here, like on a tentacle or something, to see if I could make it work or not. Well, I looked up and said, why would I do that? If it doesn't work, it would be a disaster. Not like I haven't had disasters, but it would be a real problem. But I've got this. I've got this piece of paper with the yellow paint and the dry brushing on it, and I can practice. I can test on this. I can test both the paints and my skill simultaneously to see whether or not I can do those little circles with the pearlescent paint or not. So there's two layers. The bottom layer is dark blue. That would be this color. And the inner, and then the lighter one would be this color. Let's start with this one and see, using the teeny little brush, whether I can pull off the creation of these circles with this particular paint. I don't know. I'm having, this is so typical after break, is that I keep saying it. You know why I say it? Keep saying it because it's true every time. after break, it seems to get colder down here than it did before, even though the temperature is the same or maybe even warmer. And my nose starts to drip. So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't take a break. That wouldn't be good. Anyway, those are two bits of news that I'm going to be gone for some time, and 2 weeks almost, and we'll be back 2 weeks from today, hopefully. Hopefully, if the trip goes well and the planes land on time and don't get delayed, or we get stuck in an airport having, to sleep on the floor, that kind of thing. Hopefully those things won't happen. And I won't be too terribly jet lagged. Just terribly jet lagged, not too terribly jet lagged. Okay. Then I'll be back on the 21st with relaxing painting. So that was one piece of news. The other piece of news is that we can't play the music until this whole whatever it is, I don't know what it is, with the Alexander Nakarada music is resolved. And hopefully that will maybe even be resolved by the time I get back. I don't know. Then the third piece of news is that after much discussion among the members of Dyson Dungeons, made a decision to not be painting a whole lot more minifigs and just focusing on, at this point, the Apollo, with guest appearances by the submarine until the last bits of the submarine are done. But most of the work will be done on the Apollo. And I have to just say in advance that that's not going to be very exciting stuff. That mainly, most of the work on the Apollo appears to be filling, filing, sanding, and polishing to get the parts ready for assembly. I've done some assembly. It's been okay, but okay, this can be fairly wide. As a circle goes, it can be fairly wide because it needs to be wide enough for the light blue to be applied on the inside of each circle. Okay. So like this, there's a dark blue, okay, big circle, and then a light blue inner circle. And it's really important to have both colors. Otherwise, it's not so cool. Okay, what I am determining here, much to my surprise, actually, is that it works. See, and it's kind of shiny, which is neat. So yeah, I'm going to be painting these, and then later I'll get the light stuff out and paint on the inside of the circle. Yeah. So I guess there's no excuse now to keep avoiding this. Still sticky. Well, the excuse would be that I'm waiting for the paint to dry, but I'm not sure that's going to make much difference. So I'm going to start painting. Stay on here. I'm going to start painting circular areas of blue. Oops. I may need to clean my brush frequently as it dries on the brush. Here's one, and I'm gonna make it wider. This is kind of like the outside of it. I'm gonna make it a little wider on the inside to leave room for the light blue highlight later. This is going to take forever. I'm not going to get it all done yet today. Just kind of surprised that it's working at all. Kind of pleasantly surprised, because these pearlescent paints for this kind of application are pretty neat. Sure. It's a spot. It's need to do a whole lot more of them now. This is where I like to have the music playing so that I wouldn't have to, try to talk while I'm painting sort of circular things on the on the octopus, but it's not. So as I was saying, the third piece of news is that there'll be fewer minifigs and more Apollo with occasional guest appearances from the submarine until the submarine is done. So it's going to be kind of bullish. I don't want to overdo them, but if you look at the picture, they're pretty much everywhere. So there's going to be a lot of these that need to be painted onto the octopus arms and body. Doing this without my head magnifier, um, probably a bad idea, but if they look okay to me without it, they'll probably look okay on screen when this eventually shows up. I don't know why it would show up on our D&D campaign because it's not like we spend a lot of time in the ocean, right? Maybe this would be a special land octopus, or maybe we visited an aquarium. I don't know, or maybe we'll never see it again. That could happen too. That this stream will be the only time that this will ever be seen. We'll never know. Well, I can't say we'll never know. I mean, at some point we will know. We'll know whether it's ever going to be seen again or not, because it'll either be seen or it won't. If it isn't, then this will have been its only appearance. Anyway, I'm going to be painting like ovals and sort of circular shapes and things on here for a while. Not There you go. It's not too bad, is it? I'm thinking maybe one there, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep moving along here. Not overdoing it. If it's possible to overdo these blue circular kind of things and a blue striped octopus or not, but I'm going to try not to do that overdoing thing. It's cold down here, and my nose is producing. It's cold down here, runny noseness. Okay, there's that. Put one on one little bit down here, kind of right near the end. So this is, painting the inner circle with the light blue. That's going to be a little more challenging, but that's not going to happen today. I might do one on the sample here. I might do one on the sample just to show how that would go, but I don't know. We'll see how this is playing out. There's some chat going on. I need to get what's happening. Octopus, yeah. Might be what we end up. I don't know. I mean, unless our party, Midnight Brunch, decides for some reason that would make no sense at all to go like an undersea adventure. Oh, I know. Let's go to the shore of the ocean and breathe underwater. That makes sense. Get some wizard or sorcerer or something. I forget who does what. There's important differences in the abilities of the magic users. And I used to know them, but I can't remember anymore. But we would get some sort of magic user, or we'd go to a magic shop. It's always fun doing that, and say we want things that let us breathe underwater. And they would go, "Why would you want to do that?" And we'd say, "Well, because we want to go underwater, and while we're there, we want to, not die." And oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. As much as anything else you guys do, he said it makes sense that if you want to go underwater, you'd like to just not die in the process. So, okay, underwater breathing thing. And it would be, I don't know, it might be a potion. It might be a piece of equipment and like enchanted equipment. Maybe a helmet. There probably is such a thing, a helmet of underwater breathing as available standard equipment in the game. I don't know if we'll get into a discussion of why do you want to go underwater. It's like if you're going to go underwater, it's a good idea to, be able to breathe. But why do you want to go underwater anyway? The answer to that would be, well, because on Dice and Dungeons, we painted this really cool blue striped octopus facsimile, and we want to show it off in the show. And it doesn't make sense to have it just be, hanging out like in the tavern or something, right? There's always stuff going on in the tavern on Dungeons and Dragons, but that really wouldn't make too terribly much sense. Not that that's ever stopped us before, making sense. But that probably wouldn't be a thing. So we want to see it on screen. We want to see it on the D&D show to show it off because it's, it turned out so well. So we're going to have to go underwater to view it. So that's why we need whatever it is that lets us breathe underwater. Okay. Check out the discount bin. Things are always in a discount bin. So there would be like expired potions of underwater breathing or something there. We wouldn't want to waste our money on, full price. No, we want to get them from the discount bin. We're kind of that way. Sometimes sometimes there's a spot that doesn't really have much yellow in it, especially like near the tip like that. It's down there at the bottom. It's almost got a little too uniform there, but I can't do anything about it now. And I could paint one down here. Maybe I'll put a little spot down here just to change the balance of the perspective a little bit. Yeah, that helps. That makes it look better. A little less like just a line of spots. Okay, I got about a half hour, so I'm going to just paint a few more of these and until I start getting too many oopses. I'm actually really kind of surprised that this pearlescent paint is working as well as it is. Um, Sometimes it's just really, really hard to use. I think the dark color helps too. Yeah. So if I were painting a nature model, like I am going to paint a blue striped octopus, you know, this would be probably a B minus, maybe even just a C plus, because it's just not that good. But if I'm painting a miniature for Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, it'll look all right. And if I'm just doing this to, do something on the stream because I've got it and it's kind of a cool model, then it's okay. It's in the adequate range of painting. But as you all know by now, I am not a very good painter. And I'm not a master painter and I'm not a master modeler. And so the painting and modeling I do here is pretty much just an old guy doing stuff. Okay. And building the models, I guess it wants to come off. Building the models is something actually that I enjoy doing. I was planning to do a lot of it after I retired and never really had a chance because for some reason, being retired results in less free time than working full time. I don't know how that happened, but that was the case. And so, like the 4 dozen model kits, maybe only 3 dozen, that I bought after I retired that have just been sitting around not getting done. Now, I was planning to, when I was going to build models, I was anticipating spending more time than just, the time that happens on a stream, which isn't that much. It's just, you know, actual painting time, probably like 2.5 hours or something on the stream. But so the construction of those models, if I were to do it as a hobby, which means spending, a couple of hours almost every day on it, they'd be going along a lot more quickly. But doing it on the stream, they've been taking a long time. Like the submarine has been taking almost a year to do. 3 hours at a time, mostly, but not always every week. I don't know. The Apollo might go a little more quickly if I'm doing it 3 days a week instead of one. And I might even do something else. I might do something like work on the Apollo. I'm just going to put over here, like work on the Apollo 2 days a week and get another model out and work on that on the third day just to have some variety. I don't know. We'll find out. I'll find out at the same time you find out, which will be when it happens. So yeah, the news then is that relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons will not be happening for the next almost 2 weeks. I should be back 2 weeks from today due to another family trip. Okay. There isn't any music, and that will continue to not be music until we don't know when, until the issue with Alexander Nakarada's music is somehow resolved. And there won't be a lot of minifigs. It will be mainly working on the Apollo and little bits of the submarine until the submarine is completely finished. It's kind of the news that we need to be aware of. Right. I'm mainly concerned about the outsides of these rings. The insides will be finished off with a lighter blue color. I'm hoping that works. And I'll do this last tentacle. Looks like there's a couple here. And then maybe, I'm not sure, I might just stop. We'll see what time it is and how it's going. As I get near the end of the streaming time, my ability to do anything becomes diminished. Yeah, low blood sugar, tired, nothing to mutter on about. You need to buy another one of these brushes. I've really been happy with this. I wore one out completely. And this one is starting to as well. So probably buy a couple more just so I have them around. With that blue like that, where it's thick, it's just going to get overpainted with a lighter color. I'm not wearing my head magnifiers because I'm trying to get this to be like adequate without being too terribly compulsive, which would happen if I looked through the head magnifiers and saw, the really terrible, obvious flaws that I can't see right now. Be satisfied with not seeing the terrible flaws. I'm kind of pleased with this paint. Not only is it spreading okay, which was the really surprising part, but that it's covering well. It tends to be kind of translucent, which means that these circles could, instead of being blue, ended up looking kind of green, but they're not. They're staying nice dark blue color like they should. Okay. Yeah, I suppose I should just go ahead and paint some on the body here. These really aren't going to be much larger than the ones on the tentacle. There's just going to be a lot of them. Get it all done today without going over. I don't plan to go super late. I've kind of gone over the last couple of times as I'm just trying to finish something. What's going to happen here is that I'm going to lose my focus, probably put a circle in a place where I really don't want one, where it looks bad. Maybe slop the paint around. Going like as well as I would like. So I might do one more, just the one more too many. It's the one too many. Just doing I should have stopped when I was ahead spot here. Then, and the paint is getting kind of thick also. It's starting to set up there. Becoming to use. It's really tempting now to just keep going, but Just one more. Why am I doing this? I don't know. To do with the last few minutes here is do my plug for Dungeons and Dragons. Dice and Dungeons is primarily about a Dungeons and Dragons show that streams on Twitch with live chats 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock. And that will be 2 o'clock standard time until, well, now starting this Sunday, it'll be 2 o'clock daylight saving time because we're all springing forward this Sunday here in the States and the state we're in. I'm going to stop now because otherwise something bad is going to happen in terms of painting these circles. And it's been going okay so far, and I don't want to push it. So what I am going to do is I can do it here. I'm going to do a slightly larger one, more like this size. Okay. This was a practice to see whether it was even possible. And it worked out, and it turned out to be possible. So what you need to do is check out Dice and Dungeons and Dragons show, either by watching it with live chat when it streams on Twitch or by catching previous episodes on YouTube, which is, more convenient because you can watch them and listen to them on podcasts as well at your own convenience. And we want things to be convenient for you. So that would be a really cool thing if you would do that. And then you could become like a follower. If you're not already a follower here on Relaxing Painting, you can become a follower of our Dungeons and Dragons show. You can go on YouTube and become a sponsor, or you can go, regardless of whether it's the YouTube show or whether it's, not the see, this is why I'm stopping, because I'm becoming incoherent as well. This is the other color, and I squeezed out like way, way too much. Okay, but this is really a pretty pearlescent. Is you can go to patreon.com/dice and dungeons, and you can become a patron. Yeah, if I can keep this, fine. That one I got too much of the blue on, but if I can keep the line fine. Like that one kind of turned out okay. See this one here? With the light blue over the dark blue. That's going to work. So that was a proof of concept there, even though I have enough there to like cover the entire octopus in this shiny blue color. There's a lot of it, so I guess I didn't waste too much, but I did waste it. I hate wasting paint like that. Anyway, yes, please consider becoming a follower, becoming a sponsor, or going to patreon.com/dice and dungeons and becoming a patron of Dice and Dungeons. Please check out our Dungeons and Dragons show. It is a really good show. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun doing it, and I think the audience would have a huge amount of fun watching it or listening to it or both. Some of these are a little ragged, but I'm going to have to be especially careful with this light blue so I don't get it, get too much of it on each of these. And I've got, as you can see, a whole lot more of these little irregular circular kinds of things to do all over the body of this. And then I have to do something clever with the eyes. Not sure what. I think I'm going to make the eyes like this bright blue, and then the pupils maybe black. because you can see the little octopus pupils inside the eyes. So anyway, it's coming along. It's not awful. The yellow paint was difficult to work with. The dry brushing on top of it, I think, made it look a whole lot better. So I'm glad I decided to do that and use the color that I did. And the circles using the pearlescent paint, like that sample one there, I think they're doing okay. They're coming along okay. I might even be able on the body to make some of them a little bigger. I'm not sure. But I'm going to kind of stay with that size there. So the news again, we're trying to figure out what's going on with the Nakarada music, and hopefully that'll be fixed when I get back, because I'm going to be away for almost 2 weeks. I'll be back 2 weeks from today, finishing up the Octopus maybe, and also resuming work on the Apollo and the submarine. And I'll continue to plug away on the submarine until it's done, and also begin making the Apollo look good, hopefully. Find out. And then as the submarine is finally done, I might be introducing yet another model, and I'll be alternating between the Apollo and that. So this will be a old guy making models show, unless there are like creatures and props that we need for the Dungeons and Dragons show, in which case those will be prepared here on the Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons stream. Thanks to everybody who joined today, and see you again in 2 weeks. Okay? Take care. Bye.